source of funding we look for is the existing financing. You will run across properties where the broker will tell you, no, the loan needs to be paid off, or no, the loan's not assumable. We don't really care if it's assumable. In fact, any financing out there that is assumable these days really isn't assumable. The reason for that is the way a lender will allow you to assume a loan is you basically go in, requalify. They want to charge you some fees and points and things and have you jump through hoops. So, but what we found is that oftentimes when there's existing financing in place, you can just take title to the property and make the payments on that existing financing. And we've done it a number of different ways. Now with a single-family home, we will go in and buy a single-family home, leaving the existing financing in place, and we'll just make the payments. Some people prefer to notify the lender. They'll send a letter to the lender that says, we've bought this house, we have not paid off the existing loan, we just want you to make you aware of the fact that we have taken title, here's the payment for the property. And in these days, 100 out of 100 cases, the lender takes the check, deposits the check, and it's not even a matter of them looking the other way. They want less bad loans these days, if you can imagine that. And if anyone is making the payments on a loan, they're not going to hassle with you. Now we have found that if you dare a lender to call the loan due, then they generally will call the loan due. We've had some of our students decide to test out that theory. And so with a commercial property, the same thing is in effect. They really don't want to call the loan due. They have the right to call the loan due if you leave the existing financing in place. The documentation between the owner of the property and the lender says that if they transfer title without paying that loan off, they have the right to call the loan due. And the reason those are, the paperwork is set up that way and the way it was changed a number of years ago is that loans were just being transferred along with properties and the interest rates had gone up and lenders wanted those loans to be able to be called in so that they could rewrite them at higher rates. So as long as we're in an environment where the rates tend to be fairly stable and stay low, you have the advantage of being able to go in and look at a property and know that that's one of the dynamics that you can play with. Now, with a commercial property, the difference between a commercial property and a residential property is that with a commercial property, particularly if the existing financing is, two situations I've seen it. Either if the existing financing is a very low portion of the property, say it's a first and there's a lot of equity above them, you can get commercial lenders who, depending on the lender, they might just go ahead and call the loan due, either because they want their money coming back in, or they might see it as an aggressive way to try and take that deal or take that property from you. People do strange things sometimes. The other situation I've seen is we've bought properties where the loan was a higher amount. They were in trouble. The existing owner wasn't really able to keep up with the payments. The bank had been looking at this property and getting more and more fearful over time. And when we came in and bought the property, even though we wanted to leave the existing financing in place and bring the payments current and start making the payments, the bank was in a position where they were so jittery about the property that they were going to go ahead and call the loan due anyways. And so in that particular situation, what we did is we went ahead and bought the property, and we I think we called it a delayed closing or something. We bought a property and got the attorneys from both sides to get all the documentation, everything done, and basically bought the property. And I think we put the deed somewhere. I don't know if they locked it up or put it in the attorney's file or somewhere. It wasn't recorded. So we bought the property, didn't record the deed, and went along our merry way, did the things we needed to do to end up with enough time to get the financing to come in place that we needed for the property. So the existing financing is always there. I've bought other properties. I remember one I bought a number of years ago where the people that owned it really weren't running it like a business. The lender didn't want the property back, bought the property, left the existing financing in place. The existing owners, I think, were on the hook for, I don't remember if it was a year or 2 years, at which point, after I made the payments on the property for a couple of years, they let the existing owners off the hook. I've done other deals where I did one on a smaller commercial property, similar situation. The owner didn't want the property. He wasn't behind his payments, but he was ready to get behind. Came in, took over the existing financing, and in that case actually offered a couple of other properties to the lender as additional security. It's called a blanket mortgage, to where sometimes you can offer them additional security to entice them to do a deal. So with commercial properties, existing financing deals are done both with the blessing of the lenders and without the blessing of the lenders. And the point I want to make is, with commercial property, we tend to do it where we talk to the lenders and make them aware of what's going on, and make sure. The last thing we want to do is go into a deal, particularly if we're bringing in other investors' money, and be counting on being able to leave that existing financing in place and then have them call the loan due or get into a little bit of a shoving match on it. Does that make sense? The second place we're going to look for funding is we're going to look to the owner of the property. If the owner wants to get out from under the property, or if they want to sell it, I love sitting, talking to owners, getting the rapport and the connection going, and finding out what it is that they really want to do. And a lot of times when you're talking to an owner, they have this idea that they're going to sell their property, someone's going to come in with a certified check for the full amount or whatever, and they get to go cash it. I mean, they've been working towards that point, many of them, for 20, 30 years, right? And they deserve to be able to do that. However, if they haven't been able to sell the property that way, it's fun to be able to sit down and talk with them. And I like getting people to talk about what's going to happen after they sell the property. So great, you know, gosh, if I was to buy your property, if I bought your property today and I paid you the $2.3 million that you're asking for it, would you accept that? Oh yeah, we would, right? Oh well, I can't do that. And you have a little bit of a laugh, and but if someone came in, if they bought the property and you were all set to go, then I mean, what's next for you? One of the things I love about investing and just about people and the connecting part is it allows you to develop the curious part of you. I don't know if any of you were you more curious as a little kid? I know I was. We tend to kind of get in our pathway and our things, and we just I don't want to talk to him, right? A little bit. Is it just me? And if you can invoke more of that childlike part of yourself and start to become curious. Wow, this is a great property you've got here. You've really done well building this up. Your family should really be proud of you. What's next for you? Where are you going? You gonna move? Oh yeah, we're moving to Florida. Then when I hear that they're moving to Florida, I want to know, are they going to be on the East Coast or the West Coast of Florida? Then in the course of our conversations, I'm going to be talking about what it's going to be like for them down there. And, oh, great, are you going to find out if they have grandkids or whatever? Oh, your grandkids going to be visiting you there? Wow, that's really going to be neat. If it's on let's say it's on the West Coast of Florida. Wow, can you just imagine sitting there looking out at the sunset, what that's going to be like? What are we doing at this point in time? We are building a rapport and a connection, but we're almost, I call it future pacing. We're painting out a visual and an emotional picture of what it's going to look like when their problem is solved, when their property is sold or their issues or whatever is going on. When that problem is all taken care of, what are they going to be experiencing? What are they going to be doing in their life? And so your goal with a creative deal or with an owner carry deal is, how do you get them to that point where they can be experiencing that, even though they didn't have someone come in with a certified check for the full amount of the property. Does that make sense? I'll give you an example of this was actually on a house in Southern California. It wasn't a commercial property, but it was with a realtor who owned commercial property. And he was selling the property, very stubborn, interesting guy. And he had said, well, someone came by and they had this crazy offer. I love it when some other investor's been there first. It's great. It just totally opens the door for, we should do that. We should have like each other go and make like wild, offers. And he said, oh, well, they had this crazy something. They wanted me to do this. And I don't remember what the crazy offer was, but it opened the door for us to be able to say, wow, that really, what didn't you like about that? Well, I didn't like this. Well, what did you like about it? Well, I did kind of like the idea that I would have had it sold. What we found out from this gentleman was that he had already owned his retirement home. He was going to take the money he got from the sale of this home, he was going to put it in the bank, and he was going to earn interest on it in the bank, which at that point in time, I think the interest rates were a little higher than what they are now. It was, 4.5%, something like that. And so we said, well, if there was a way that we could get you to where you were moved into the retirement home and painted that picture out for him a little bit, and you had that income coming in from the sale of your home, you're getting that nice rate of return. Is that something we should be talking about, or probably not? And his answer was, tell me more. How would that work? Well, you probably wouldn't like this idea, but in other similar situations, I like introducing things through stories. I find that it's more comfortable for me, and a lot of times it's more comfortable for the seller, if we can talk about someone else's situation, rather than if I'm trying to do a deal with Dominic, rather than me saying, well, Dominic, I'll buy your property, and then you carry back a note, and we'll pay you. It makes it where I think people are trying to figure out if it's good for them, or if it's I guess it's like the difference between maybe for a woman going to a store and having someone bring out a dress and say, here, try this on, and walk out here, we want to see how it looks on you, as opposed to going to a store and saying, well, look at these models modeling these dresses for you. I don't know if that's a good analogy or not. Probably not. Trying to cross over the male-female boundary line there. I totally blew that one. Okay, edit that part out. All right. So, but what I like to do is share stories in a situation similar to yours. What was structured, and it can be one of your deals that you're done. It can be one of the deals that you've read about in our books. One of the deals of someone else that you've met or that's in your mastermind group. In a similar, it could be Donald Trump. You could be, right? In a situation similar to this, what was done was the buyers came in and they bought the property, and then the owner had the security where they knew that if anything went wrong, that they would, for sure get their property back, and then maybe even plus some. And the owner in that situation got a steady stream of income from that property, which, gosh, in your case, see how we can roll it right over into in a similar situation, or here's what someone else did, then directly over into the benefit language of, well, in your case, and I don't know if it would work for you, but if we did structure something like that and figure out how to make it work, that would mean that you could be there with little Johnny on your knee and, fishing for the marlin down there, or whatever it is that they told me that they want to be doing. But that's probably not even worth talking about. So you've kind of found out what they want, you've feature paced it, you've suggested the idea, put them kind of emotionally and visually there, and then you've said, well, but no, you probably wouldn't want to be there doing whatever, having your problem completely solved and finally feeling good to where you could rest and sleep at night. You probably wouldn't want that. Okay, do you see how that works? The reason I share that with you is I found that helping someone to know how they can achieve what they want to get out of a deal is so much more important than structuring it and exactly the right interest rate or that type of thing. It's one of the reasons that I find I'm much more effective, and you may too, putting deals together with creative financing, typically much more effective sitting down with the owner as opposed to dealing with the broker. Because you could have all the conversations and paint out future pictures and everything you want with a broker, even if he knew what the seller was going to do, and a lot of times they don't know. If you told the broker, well, here's what we'll do, the broker's going to go to the seller, and what's the broker going to say? They want you to carry the financing. They're not putting anything down. By the way, when there's nothing down, do you know how a broker translates nothing down? They don't even hear it. It's like the Vulcan mind warp thing. If it's nothing down, it comes in as no commission to you, and they don't take well to that. So we do, with brokers involved, we do work very diligently to find ways to get the brokers paid up front. I'll give you an example of a creative deal we did not too far from here a little bit ago where, yes, the brokers were paid. Matt, run the mic over to you.
Yeah, quick question for you. Personally, what do you find percentage-wise people responding to owner carry in your own?
What percent of people will respond to owner carry? I'm probably not a good one to answer that because I'm generally not even going to get into that whole conversation until I'm sitting down with them in person. And that doesn't happen a lot of times. A lot of times the broker wants to try and block that, or the seller doesn't have enough motivation to be able to get to a point where you can do that. And there's a variety of ways that you can do that. I've had some of my students who've gone out and just made offers that are at or close to the asking price to get a property under contract. Then they have the conversation with the broker to say, well, looks like we need to look at some things. We did an initial check on the numbers and they're not quite matching the pro forma. Is there a way that we could all get together? I always include the broker if the property is listed. I certainly wouldn't want to do it without your expertise. We're going to build the broker up and make sure that they know that they're important and that they're going to get paid. Do you have someplace, a room with like a big table or something where we could sit down and kind of talk this over, because they all have the conference room or whatever? And ideally, I'd like to do it. I'd like to meet the owner, preferably. Where do you think I'd prefer to meet the owner? Ideally, maybe at the apartment, or maybe at the owner's home, or maybe a restaurant, or ideally, it doesn't matter that much. And you get in situations with the brokers where it's crazy, but the broker, you'd have to guess that they're doing whatever they can to make sure that they don't get paid, because they just will do crazy things sometimes to have the deal not work, and that's okay. Someone want to run the mic for me? Oh, Jonathan grabbed it. Pays to sit up front, Glenn. You don't have to reach so far.
The student in the back. Just a real quick question on what has been the response or the success with your students actually doing that almost full price offer and then trying to back down in the deal to a negotiated price. Has there been any feedback on how that's going?
I don't have the numbers on that. Do you know, Peter, on some of the people that are doing that? I know Jeff Carter was one of the ones that was doing that. The question is, if you go out and offer too much basically for the property, and then as a way just to get in and try and find your way to get with the owner, what the success rate has been on that?
If I can just throw a number out there, I would say 5%. Mm-hmm.
So that's a Mr. Carter thing? I could catch up with Jeff, ask him how that's worked?
Yeah.
For him? All right.
Yep. Okay, who's our microphone runner?
With that strategy, do you find that sometimes brokers you get a reputation of being like a non-closer, and that might hurt you within the broker community by doing that, like going back and retrading after it's under contract?
Question is, if you were making a lot of overpriced offers through a particular broker, or
Well, like if you're doing that to get properties under contract, and then going and doing the thorough due diligence, making sure you have a good price and everything. I did that in Charlotte, and I probably didn't do it properly, but I pissed off a couple of the brokers by doing that, and going to retrade once they had the contract reviewed and everything's ready to go, and then I come back and say, well, in fact, this is a ridiculous price. Have you seen? I mean, is that well, in so many words.
to me, somebody who's in the business where they get paid on commission and they've made a choice to go ahead and put time and effort into something and write up the paperwork, and fully knowing that a real estate deal is never closed until it's closed, for them to come back to you and be upset that you wasted their time, to me, is ludicrous from my position as an investor. So am I gonna worry about the brokers being upset about that? I wouldn't myself, but for some people here, I know there's some of you here who you don't like that idea, and that's okay. You don't like the idea of going out and making higher priced offers to get your foot in the door, and it's not a fit. That's okay. Don't pick that idea. Pick some of the other ideas that I share with you. I myself, I like to go in and get what you can done negotiating when you go in, but then I like to use language like, well, gosh, based upon the numbers you're showing us, here's I finally talked my investors into we can go ahead with such and such, based upon the information you've given us, because then that leaves us the door open later to go back in and say, wow, who would have thought, we thought the expenses were going to be at 34%. Who would have thought 52% expenses? What a shock. We're going to have to pay you less. So, and so can a broker say, well, who do you think you are coming back telling me the expenses are 52%, when he knows darn well that they were always at 52%, but he wrote up he went along with the whole, let's fluff up this deal and make the expenses really low and see if we can get more. So I don't know. I mean, you get, I guess you just get a little thicker skin over time, to where, in the beginning it's you're worried about upsetting somebody, and as long as you're operating in a straightforward manner. I mean, if I go in and I put something under contract and it says the earnest money is fully refundable for 30 days while we have the ability to do our due diligence, if there's something we don't like about the property and we decide not to move on it, or if we decide that we need to make a lower offer, gosh, I feel really bad about this, and I know there's some brokers out there that would get upset if I came back to them and tried to put a deal together to make sure that broker got paid. And I mean, most people would probably just say, "Oh no, we don't want the deal. We decided we don't like the economic development." For me, I'd like to buy the property. Should I go ahead and give you the real number, or are you going to be upset at me and not like me because, some brokers, they say like, "Oh, he's trying to retrade" or whatever, but you wouldn't say that about me, would you? Or maybe you would. Okay, so I mean, have fun with it, right? Have fun with it. Yep. Okay, Dominic.
Thanks. In your art of negotiation, I guess, do you find going in with your offer that you have to justify why you offer, meaning show them where you came up with the numbers, or do you find that's very confrontational and it just leads to a nasty feeling at the end? What's the strategy there?
I've found that it helps to have some basis for what you're doing, numbers wise. One of the things that I've seen done fairly effectively is based upon the numbers that we were able to prove out and at a cap rate, which is the cap rate for the area, here's what it's worth. It's hard for somebody who knows how properties are valued and who has done the same thing themselves on a number of properties. It's hard for them to be able to come back and say, your formula is wrong, right? What formula? I mean, we're all using the same formulas, right? So there might be some argument over the numbers or that type of thing, but being able to go in and with an offer and say, well, based upon what we've got right here, if you can show me where where we're off and that the NOI is actually higher than that, yeah, we've got some flexibility there. Same way as we've got some flexibilities to retrade when we find out that the numbers on their tax returns don't match up. So works both ways. But yeah, I think being able to have some substantiation tends to help on a deal, to where you can get someone to really the reason that someone's saying yes to your deal is an emotional reason. They're tired of dealing with the property. They're moving. They've decided they want to retire. They've got something that they want to accomplish, because if it's a good piece of commercial property and it's creating the income for them and everything's going rosy, then why are we having this conversation, right? Unless they maybe have it on the market and they just, well, yeah, let's list it with a broker and put it way up here and see what happens. Although oftentimes when someone lists a property with a broker, even at an inflated price, the reason that they're doing that is because there's some underlying emotional reason that they would like to be out from that property or whatever. Does that make sense? So they're agreeing to your deal because of an emotional reason. Then they're going to look for the logical side, which your point, which is, well, if you can show them, well, here's the numbers and that's how we came up with the price, they can agree to a lower price. And even though it doesn't feel good emotionally, maybe to take the lower price, their logic can overcome that.